All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to our next version of interviews with the interviews with the pros, discussions with the pros for whiskey. This is crazy. I can't believe that it has now been almost a year. Tonight we have some firsts. There are going to be a number of firsts tonight. We are being joined by Andrew Howell and Ari Klafter from Thornton Distillery. They have generously provided us with several whiskeys, Dead Drop Whiskies. Before we get started, I just want everybody to know that Eric has put in the chat the order for tonight. We're starting with rum, and then we are going to the American Pecan, then the Rye and the Old Fashioned. As far as the firsts for tonight, I want to point out that tonight is the first night that we're actually sampling things that some that aren't actually whiskeys, okay? Because we have rum tonight, and we actually have our first mixed drink. We have the Old Fashioned, so this is going to be fascinating and fun. Ari, Andrew, thank you very, very much for your generous samples tonight. Can you please tell us why you want us to start off with the rum?
This is like songs where they count pie and shit.
I think we want to get started with the rum just because it is it's a product that I'm particularly proud of, and it's also a little more delicate than our whiskeys. So I think I wanted everyone to approach this with a pretty fresh palate. It's also a little lower proof than some of the whiskeys we'll be tasting later in the evening. Yeah.
Okay, well, tell us about it.
Absolutely. This is our Kosher for Passover dark rum, which is a product you don't see a whole lot. It sort of came about where I come from a bit of a rum background. After I did my master's in brewing and distilling at Heriot-Watt, I went to work at Privateer Rum in Salem, Massachusetts. And I got a bit of a rum pedigree there and really decided that it's a spirit I enjoy. And I think there's a lot more to be explored there. And it's something I wanted to do also when I came here at Thornton Distilling Company. It just so happens that we were looking into releasing all of our products as kosher certified with the OU at the time. And so it synced up well, because if you look at the market, what is actually available in a kosher for Passover form where you can't drink anything that involves grain, really certified kosher for Passover products are pretty slim. You know, there's
Right.
You get Slivovitz, you get some really sweet wines. I think recently Patron was given that designation, which was pretty huge. So because it's made from sugarcane, we're able to create a certified kosher for Passover product that is supervised at every step of the way.
Okay, so I have a question, two questions about this in particular. The first question is, how is this different from the single cask nation version of your kosher for Passover rum?
The short answer is it really isn't. It's a matter of, this was a blending of two barrels that Josh and Jason had selected, and they wanted to be part of their lineup. And it's also released at a higher proof. So this is a little more approachable at 80 proof.
Okay.
So this was a bottling of two different barrels at 3 years old. And our flagship, or rather our official bottling version, is similar age. This is actually the first time we're releasing this. And this was a blend of two barrels. One was a number 2 char with toasted heads, and the other one was a number 1 char. I'm a big fan of lower char barrels with a medium plus toast profile.
Okay. Well, I have to tell you, I'm not at all a connoisseur of rum. I don't know much about rum. I will tell you that this is actually quite tasty, but this is a whiskey group. So we're going to be focusing more on the whiskeys. I'm sure we'll have some questions later about the rum. But there's something else that I have to ask both of you. I am going to gather that most of the people in this group are not familiar with Dead Drop, and they're not familiar with Thornton. So if you could take a few minutes and tell us a little bit about yourselves, give us a little bit of the history. Where did you come from, and how did you end up producing whiskeys that are now getting attention from people around the country?
Sure. Apologies again for being late. We had some technical difficulties, so thank you for your patience. As you mentioned, my name is Andrew Howell. I started the company in 2014, so some time ago, and we partnered with Jake Weiss, my partner. We have this very old building in Thornton, Illinois that was built in 1857. It's the oldest standing brewery in Illinois. Some of the breweries that predated it burnt down in the Chicago fire. So building has a long, colorful history. Capone operated out of here during Prohibition. Just a bunch of breweries all the way up until the early 1950s operated out of here. And so we thought there was just a really cool history. And then sort of once we realized there was a fully functional limestone filtered artesian well that John Bielfeldt, the first brewer, utilized in the 1800s, and it's still working. We were like, okay, this is awesome. We had looked at properties in the city and all that stuff, and so we got kind of like sidetracked in doing like property development for a few years, where we wanted to just start laying down barrels right away. When I first started, I was distilling in my garage and stuff, but then realized real quick that the scale that we were going to operate, my friend Ari was, finishing his degree at Heriot-Watt in Scotland. And I was like, okay, we need an actual expert. I consider myself sort of like a novice distiller, to be honest. And then Ari is operating at a completely different level, and he's the biggest dork I know. And so I figured if I could convince him to move to Chicago from New York or Massachusetts, where he was when he came on board, that we would be good to go. And so Ari came on board. We started laying down barrels, and then we finally got around to a grand opening in December. And then 3 months later, the pandemic hit and took it on the chin like everyone else. But we essentially launched our brand during the pandemic, which is quite challenging, as you can imagine. And so that's why, so right now, we're trying to get our name out there and, introduce ourselves. And
well, we're glad to help. I mean, Ari was one of the first people who joined our Facebook group, and I didn't know him, but we had a few mutual friends. And then Eric and I met Ari at Dave Sweet's tasting contest back in, I think it was September or October, whenever that was. So we met then, and you actually called me Mr. Matar, and I was a little offended because it made me feel old, Ari.
I don't know. It's just my upbringing, I suppose.
I mean, we were waiting in line to get into Sweets tasting, and somebody said, "Hi, Gil," and all of a sudden, and I hear this guy behind me. Oh, Mr. Matar, and I look around. This guy who looks like he's 12. I mean, he had facial hair, but he looked like he was 12. So that was you, Ari. So it was a pleasure.
Pretty apt description, actually.
So, you already told us about the, about the water, the water source, which obviously is incredibly important. Let's go on to the second whiskey that we have here, which is an American Pecan whiskey. And while we're tasting that, I want you to tell us what exactly it means to be a pecan whiskey, and what is your grain source? Where do you get your grains for your whiskeys? So it's a double question, both about the pecan whiskey and about your grains.
Fair. Pecan whiskey is in and of itself a pretty undefined category. I guess to back up, this sort of came about because pecan is one of my favorite tasting notes, particularly in American whiskeys. And I sort of wanted to figure out a way to bring that to the forefront. Conversely, flavored whiskeys have a very bad rap, and for very, very good reason. They tend to be low proof, artificially flavored, artificially colored, and sugared to the gills. We didn't want to do anything with this. We wanted to make something that was very much a whiskey drinker's whiskey. So it's 86 proof. There is no artificial flavoring or coloring, and definitely no sugar. It's an interesting product. We actually work with one of the last remaining pecan farms in Illinois. I get them to send me pecan wood, which we then chop up in-house, toast here, and then age with the whiskey before doing a secondary maturation with roasted pecans.
Oh, wait. So there's actually pecan wood and roasted pecans adding to the flavor here.
Exactly. In pretty interesting ways. Pecan wood, it didn't taste at all sort of as I would think, which is very close to pecans. It's more toasty, a little funky, and a little bit phenolic. It's got a tiny, tiny little bit of a smoke flavor, which is really cool for me. And the pecans give it a really classic, nutty, sort of toasty flavor as well.
It's funny what you mentioned about the flavored whiskeys, and you're right, they do get a very bad rap. And I've had some good ones. I mean, like You know, we talked to Paul Hletko at Few. You know, his coffee
Cold
was
cut's great. Yeah,
yeah, that cold cut. I mean, that is a delicious drinker. You know, it's great stuff. And you know, I've had some. I had a cherry whiskey out of Michigan. You know, so there's some good stuff out there. That's not that bad. But tell me about your grain source for your whiskeys. Okay, so this you're calling. So this is a pecan. Okay, this is American pecan. But what is the grain in here?
The grain here is 99% corn. I wanted to go with a high corn bourbon as a base because it's a little bit richer. And I found that something that's a little higher rye or even wheat kind of gets a little drowned out by the pecan. So I wanted sort of a richness to hold up against the richness of the pecans themselves. Particularly in lieu of using any sort of sweetening, that's a good way to get a bit of body, a bit of sweetness. But to your larger question is we work, I use BSG for most of our grain sourcing. They are up in Minnesota, I believe. So most of the grains, particularly for our single malts, are domestic malt varieties. We actually have one project on the horizon. I think we'll get into this a little bit later, where we are working with a local maltster out in Indiana called Sugar Creek to create an Illinois peated single malt. So we'll get a little bit into that. I think a little bit later. And single malt is really our main focus, and it's my main focus over the next few years, laying down as many barrels of that as we can. We still have our other products, but
right. But we don't have. But we don't have any of that tonight. We're not tasting any of the single malt tonight, which means we're gonna have you back on here in like a year or two or something. You know.
I guess there's no other option.
Yeah, I'll twist your arm, twist my arm. You know, get more samples. You know. Careful. We'll cut this. Okay, wonderful. So, how about the barrels? Okay, so in general, what types of barrels are you using? Where do you source them? Are they charred? What's the deal with your barrels?
Absolutely, that's a really good question, because that's actually something that I get pretty geeky about, and that depends on which products that we're talking about. For most of our new barrels, I try to source them through Independent Stave Company down in Missouri, which is really great because they are able to give me barrels basically to whatever profile we're looking for. You know, one of the things that I think is sometimes it's a little bit of a shame, but sometimes distilleries fall into the trap of like, we just use number 3 charred barrels, or we only use one type of barrel. Whereas for me, it's part of an important component in putting together a recipe. So for our rum, we use a lot of toasted barrels as well as charred barrels. For our single malt, it's a really interesting mix where I use new barrels. I use mostly low char barrels with 18-month seasoned staves with toasted cask heads, so kind of a little bit of amalgamation, plus refill barrels. We just got in a bunch of beautiful bourbon barrels from Southern Distilling, and one of the things that I really like about what I'm able to do here is that as a DSP that also makes rye whiskey and that also makes rum, I'm able to dump those barrels in the morning and then 30 minutes later fill them with single malt new make.
Okay, right. So, okay, and then to make sure that people understand what you were saying there, obviously, bourbon needs to be aged in virgin oak casks. Okay, so when you're talking about things that aren't, named bourbon or named rye, or named single malt, you can actually use different types of, used barrels. Is what you're trying to say here, right? Okay.
Exactly. Yeah.
And when are you using, when do you use the virgin oak? For which products are you using virgin oak?
We use that for the rye whiskey. The pecan also uses virgin oak as well as the base for our old fashioned. And then I use that for some of our single malt and for some of our rum as well. Actually, most of our rum is virgin oak, but not all of it is charred. For our single malt, I do use a mix of virgin oak, again, low char, seasoned staves, toasted cask heads, plus refill rum, rye, and bourbon barrels. And later on down the line, we'll probably start working in some kosher wine, but it's a little bit down the road as well.
Got it. I've got to tell you something. this pecan, it is unique and it's tasty. It definitely is a whiskey, but it definitely has the nuttiness to it also. I am enjoying it. It's interesting stuff. Are your products available in just the Midwest, or where are people able to buy Dead Drop products right now?
Sure, we're available in the Midwest. We're about to hit Benny shelves. We just got in Jewel up north, and then we have locations in New Jersey, New York. A lot of retailers in Brooklyn just took us on. So we're trying to focus on just a few market, or just a couple. We're still really small, so we don't have that much product.
We also have a small footprint in Northwest Indiana.
Yeah.
Got it. Yeah, well, that's so close to you, so it would
Exactly.
be pretty
We're
easy,
15 minutes from the border, so why not?
Got it. So let's talk about number 3. So number 3 is our actual whiskey here. It's the unflavored whiskey. This is a rye whiskey. Tell us about this rye whiskey, where you get the rye from, what's the actual mash bill, stuff like that.
Absolutely. So the mash bill for this is 63% rye, 19% corn, and 17% malted barley.
Okay.
So we don't use any exogenous enzymes. It's we're getting all of our enzymes from that malted barley. That is something I think for that we got some of our grains from Hogston Mill, which is a popular grain supplier for corn and rye, and then we use BSG for the malt itself. This is aged at least 2 years, so usually it's a little bit over 2 years. So it's a straight rye whiskey in number 4 char barrels.
And this is, I see it is 45 ABV, right?
Yes, it is.
45 ABV. So I got to tell you, this is delicious. I love the nose on it. It's sweet and spicy. It is very drinkable. It's got a nice aftertaste. I'm very much enjoying this. And tell me a little bit about, so you mentioned here that you guys started in 2014. Okay. This is a 2-year, it's a 2-year-old product. Okay. Right on 2 years. So are you trying to get your rye to be the same every year? Talk to us a little bit about consistency of product. So you have this mash bill that you just mentioned to us. Are you going to try to stick with that mash bill and make next year's version taste like this year's version?
Interesting question.
That is an interesting question. Plans are, I would say, just to back up, yes, consistency is very important for harvesting barrels and putting together a blend. I think our ongoing plans for rye, we still need to iron them out, figure out what our production levels are going to look like, and how much of it is going to be released. It's something that we have in a fairly limited supply. But in generally speaking, the way that I think about production versus harvesting, basically laying down barrels, distilling, laying down barrels, and harvesting, I try to lay down more barrels than you think you're going to harvest initially, because you really do want to increase that age statement as much as you can. I mean, obviously within reason, but we do want that our flagship products to gradually increase in age. So as circumstances allow us to, put down barrels, that is the goal.
This might actually come offline soon.
Okay.
So we have a limited supply left. We are distributing it, and people it's being received really well, but we've been focusing primarily on single malt. Yeah. So there's sort of a bottleneck there, forget the phrase that. And so if we pivot back to it and, put more barrels down, awesome. But we are trying to figure out exactly what the play is with respect to rye. So.
Okay. So it sounds to me like you're new enough and young enough that you're still trying to, determine what your place in the marketplace would be, what types of products you really want to produce to us and provide to us, right?
Yeah, it's primarily single malt whiskey, but we're still a couple years, out from releasing that. So that's why we have products like the Pecan that's fun, but the gin and some of the other things we are trying to execute at a very high level now in the interim. And then once the single malt whiskey comes out, we want that to be kind of define us.
Yeah.
It's funny that you mentioned that, because one thing we've learned from other distillers whom we've interviewed here is that you know, gin frequently is a product that helps them get some money through the door early on in the process.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
Yeah.
It doesn't hurt that it's also a really fun product to make.
How so?
So, you know, well, you know, I would say much of when you stick to like one spirit category, each week is kind of like it's a little bit trying to maintain those levels, your mashing, your distilling, and so on and so forth. And you're usually doing it to a very determined recipe. For something like a botanical spirit, there's a lot of really interesting R&D that goes involved, and there's a lot of different ingredients that you can use that, you know, say for our single malt, even though, you know, I do use some specialty malts here and there, it is a little more traditional and defined. So, you know, an interesting thing, I'm able to use flowers for gin. I'm able to use fresh ruby red grapefruit peel. So there's a lot of cool R&D, and there's a lot of different techniques that you can use for gin that we use that don't really translate to other things, like using vapor basket. So using putting some of our more delicate botanicals in the gin basket to allow alcohol vapor to infuse with that, getting like that more delicate flavor and aroma without getting some of the harsher qualities. So it's just a different side of being a distiller, if I'm being honest.
Yeah, that's good. Well, I mean, there's nothing wrong with admitting that you have fun making a certain product. You know,
Right?
You know, nobody's going to begrudge you for that
It's
one.
not like it's vodka. You know?
Ouch. Actually, you know, it is funny you mentioned that, because several years ago I was talking with Brett Pontani at Benny's about one of my neighbors who had done a favor for me, and this particular neighbor likes vodka, and I don't know why, but he does. And I was walking through the aisles with Brett, and he's like, they're all pretty much the same. You know, they taste pretty much the same. He said, let's give them a story. And we found on their shelves that there was a particular vodka, I think it's called Blue Rain, I think, or something like that, from Southern Illinois. And the story behind it is that their annual output is completely determined by the amount of corn that's produced in this one field every year. That's it. Okay. And it's special. It had a fun bottle, and I got it from a neighbor, and he liked it. So what can I say? You know, Brett knew what he was talking about. It was a good vodka. It was good stuff.
That's awesome.
You know, it's great stuff. So your distillery, it's relatively new. Okay. Tell us about tours in your distillery. Obviously, you can't be doing them now because of, you know, COVID and all that stuff, right? You're not open at this point, right?
We are open at a limited capacity. You know, we follow all the guidelines very closely. So we're allowed to have up to 50 people, I believe. But we have a 20,000 square foot facility. So, you know, like 30 foot, 40 foot tall ceilings in a lot of the areas. So we can get a smaller group in here, everyone's distanced, and we feel like, you know, we can operate pretty safely. So we just reopened a couple weeks ago, and then, you know, we brought the bar staff back on board. So that's really exciting. They were working in production and stuff, so we could keep them, you know, on payroll and everything during the pandemic. But the tours are just sort of on hold. We have a big property, and so I think it's a really interesting tour, and we get a lot of really positive feedback about it. We go underground into the subterranean well, which is like kind of a, you know, a tight space. So you don't really want a larger group going down there together. And then
Sure.
taking people in the production facility, you know, we are producing, you know, consumable products. So it's like, maybe we just hold off for now and then bring those back.
Yeah, we're hoping to bring them back, you know, in the coming months, but
Right.
right now, just trying to be safe and continue doing what we're doing. But our tasting room and our event space is open in limited capacity.
Seems like I'm just giving free tours now. Customers will ask me when I'm here, and I end up just showing them around instead. So before I could say, hey, yeah, buy a tour ticket, but now it's like, okay, come on, you know, I'll show you this or that.
Yeah, you know, that'll come back to you in the end. It'll be good.
Yeah.
That'll be the right thing to do.
Yeah, good.
So, you know, what is it about the Midwest? Why have we seen such an incredible explosion in distilleries here? You know, we have the Blom brothers, you know, we have Whiskey Acres, we have Opadon, we have Few, we have Koval, we have all these different all over the place. What is it about the Midwest? Why are we seeing such an explosion here in good quality distilleries that are producing great whiskeys?
I think it's really boring here. There's nothing else to do, so people, for a lack of, I'm just kidding. I would say it has something to do with the water, and then all the immigrants that came over back in the day. You know, and
I mean, I would also say, you know, it's the grain belt. The Midwest is the heart of American agriculture, of grain production, which brings you closer to the source, and you also get like a heritage and expertise in processing those ingredients. So I would argue that that has played a big role in that. And obviously, in the past, there's been a lot of manufacturing here in the Midwest. I'm an East Coast guy, so I'm still learning the lay of the land here. But I think people we talk sometimes about how terroir or like geographic identity plays into whiskey, into distilled products. And I think that's probably much at play here. That's also why you see so many great brandy distilleries out in California and the Pacific Northwest. You know, I also think that like there were some really important, really just milestone distilleries that came on board here in Illinois in particular, like the ones that you had mentioned.
Right. So, you know,
journeyman.
Oh yeah, journeyman. Yeah, actually, Bill was one of our first interviewees. You know, Bill, you know, he's a great guy, and you know, believe me, when everything opens up, I'm sure that we're going to see a bunch of us getting into a van, heading out there to you know, visit Bill and spend some time at his distillery. We'll also, I'm sure, a bunch of us will come down to see you guys. I have a few other questions, of course, but before I get to my other questions, tell us about the old fashioned. So this is the first time that anybody has provided to us an actual mixed drink. So talk to us about the old fashioned.
All right, a couple of firsts tonight. This is something that's sort of, you know, it's interesting launching a brand and also launching products during this unprecedented pandemic. But it came about because, you know, we have put a lot of time into developing a really awesome, really high level cocktail program in our bar here. But, you know, we're also finding that people weren't able to come out, but they're interested in a similar quality drink that maybe they, you know, they don't have the chops to do to play bartender at home, or you just want to be able to pour something over ice.
Does this have the pecan? This has the pecan in it, right?
It doesn't. It uses a bourbon base, a straight bourbon base, and that's how that came about. It's something that we make every component of in-house. We partnered with Eden Lauren, who's one of the managing partners of the Violet Hour, to develop this recipe. They make TBH Plus, which is pretty similar. It's a product that is sold to consumers to mix with whiskey at home to be the base of an old fashioned. And so we brought her down here in the facility, and we made our own Demerara syrup, as well as the bittering component. And after that, we blend our whiskey in and package it at at 74 proof.
Okay, so what whiskey is in this?
It is a 3-year corn bourbon.
Okay, all right. So the first one, so the pecan is essentially, it's also a bourbon, but it's aged with the pecan, right? That's the difference.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, towards the end, yeah.
All right, and then this has the added syrup and all that stuff. It's very sweet. It's very, you know, it's fun. Well, obviously it's going to be sweet. It has the syrup in it, but no, it's tasty. But and then you said this is 37% alcohol.
Yes, it is. So for this in the pecan, we bring in barrels actually from MGP because they work with this mash bill. We find it works really, really well with those two products. And yeah, the sweetness is definitely there because we use Demerara syrup, which is definitely richer than your average simple syrup, you know, because it has it's a darker color and deeper flavor. One thing that should be mentioned about this is you're drinking it neat. It's sort of formulated to pour in a rocks glass over a cube, so that sweetness does get cut a little bit as it dilutes.
Now, how are you selling now? How is this being sold? How is this being brought to the public?
This is our distribution channels locally through Momentum.
Okay.
Yeah, they want to bring it out to the East Coast. It's doing really well. We actually just sold out. Ari's about to bottle more tomorrow. So.
Yep.
Wow.
Yeah.
Oh, that's
and we
amazing.
found that, it's interesting. This actually became, once we released it towards the very end of last year, just here at our tasting room, it became one of our best sellers very, very quickly. People really took to this, and I think it's the first time you may have had had it on this product on video series, but it's something that I've actually started to see a few really highly regarded whiskey distilleries doing it. You see, the one that comes to my mind is Whistledig. They put out a 375 old fashioned as well, and then you see stuff coming from like Tattersall, which is also really nice. So there's precedent for it, and there seems to be an appetite at this moment.
Got it. Well, and again, if you like doing it, as you mentioned before, like with the gin, if you like having fun producing a product like this, then why the heck not, right?
Yeah.
So
to that effect, make this little absinthe, which you make on a little tiny still as of right now.
Absinthe.
Yeah, some absinthe blanche.
And what about the wormwood? How do you handle that?
So we can do that now. A couple of years ago, the TTB kind of realized that some of the myths about wormwood weren't really founded, so they relaxed them, and now you're able to make proper absinthe. So
Really?
just
I have not hallucinated much lately, so
that's good. Grab yourself a bottle.
All right, I'm going to ask you one more question before I open it up to the group for questions. Joshua Hatton and Jason Johnstone Yellen. Okay. Well, what's it like to work with them when it comes to selecting casks?
And I love talking to Joshua because we can just geek out, particularly since single malt is like something that we both know and love. Just kind of talking about the different profiles of different barrels. They're very specific. They're very attentive to nuances as they're tasting it, and you can see that with the barrels that they selected, because although Single Cask Nation typically does do single casks, they wanted to do a blend of two different casks. And so I remember going through that a little bit with Josh as he was trying to choose two different barrels that would complement one another and create something that was better than the sum of its parts.
Got it. Because that their stuff sells out almost immediately. I don't know if you've ever been on their website, but when
I remember the day it came live, and so I was sort of watching that in real time, and it sold, and our product sold out really quick.
Yeah, that was like 3 minutes or something.
Yeah,
like
that was the easiest depletion we've ever done.
Yeah.
But no, I love their approach. I really do, and I love the different types of products that they do. But one thing that's really interesting is just how much they lay out the tasting notes and the different components on the bottle. So you'll see basically a spectrum for floral, sweet, rich, oaky. I think one of the tasting notes that they put together for their barrel pick with us was Heroset. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Now. Okay. I've got to interrupt you there for a second.
Go for it.
We have some people on here who are not Jewish. Okay. And so
sorry, I'm dropping slang.
So for those of you who are not Jewish, Joshua Hatton just referred to a flavor profile of something that is very nutty, fruity, and sweet. Okay, is how I think that I would just. I'm not even going to try to get into what Heroset really is.
Google it if you're inclined.
Yeah, it's not worth it. But nutty, fruity, and sweet. But that's hilarious that he would use that in the tasting notes for the kosher for Passover rum. That is absolutely hilarious. Okay, so what I want to do right now is this. I do have a bunch more questions for you, but I would rather that we give other people an opportunity here. First, Eric, do you have any particular questions for Andrew and Andy?
Yeah. Well, first of all,
Ari. Sorry, Andrew and Ari.
Sorry. Yeah. First of all, I love the products. The rye is phenomenal. I guess if you guys are going to stop producing it, then I'll need to stock up on a few bottles before it comes off production. Since I do have the benefit of keeping the bottles from when we did the pouring, I love the packaging, the labels. It's great artwork. And actually, as we were pouring, I think Michael Bloom noticed that and I don't know if this is going to show up, but yeah, on the back of the band, you've got these hidden barrels in there. I thought that was a cool touch. Can you talk about the labels and how you came across or about those?
Sure. That's kind of like a little Easter egg where we figured if we could get people at a liquor store to try to look through the keyhole. That would just be funny if people were like going like that in the liquor store. But yeah, we worked with a fantastic designer in Chicago, Mighty Few. They're a boutique agency. They do phenomenal work of Revolution and some of the Goose Island products, and they've been working with us ever since. So they helped us put everything together. Dead drop is an old bootlegging term. So essentially, if I made you a barrel of whiskey, hid it behind the bush, and you picked it up at midnight, that would be a dead drop. So we kind of look at it as picking up from where our predecessors left off. This building has a rich history of malt fermentation. So, you know, after the Prohibition era and Capone and those guys left, the marketplace had kind of changed. There was 3-tier system. Refrigerated train cars allowed companies like Budweiser to now ship their product nationwide, and all the mom and pops that existed before that that tried to reopen had a really hard time about it. And so we thought it was cool to be able to try to bring that back to the building. And so yeah, Dead Drop kind of encompasses that. Yeah, and then I guess the water being the key to the product for us. Yeah. So yeah, is there anything you want to add to that?
Yeah, I'd say it's I really like actually that sort of collage in the back, because you know, in our clear products, on our gin or something like that, you can see that immediately. Sometimes with the aged products, it's like you said, like you have to be already drinking that bottle, and then one day it just kind of catches your eye, maybe as you drunk like half that bottle already. So it's a cool just little hidden feature.
Yeah, that's cool. Thanks.
Eric, do you have any other questions?
No, not right now.
Okay. What I'm going to suggest is that people use the raise hand feature. We have a lot of people on here tonight, and I think it'll be easier for Eric to moderate the questions if you do that raise hand feature that Zoom has. Or Eric, if you have any other instructions you'd like to give people.
No, that's good. I'll do Ariel. I'll do the brothers Eisenberg. Ariel, then Josh.
All right, thanks for coming out tonight. Hopefully I'm not too loud in your ear, as Gil has so politely described me. My brother actually had noted the legs on the Pecan, and when I was looking at my tasting glass and holding it up, I'm actually getting some kind of particulate in the glass itself. Mm-hmm. And I remember you had said that when you're doing the barrel aging, you suspend some lightly charred pecan wood in the barrel, and then you finish it with roasted pecans. Exactly. So is that particulate related to the roasted pecan?
It is. It's more the pecans than the wood themselves. And this is something that, you know, we had talked about a lot internally, because there's filtering. It's filtered like all of our other other dark products, but there's a different thresholds. And if we wanted to get rid of that, we could. You could choose a finer filter, but I find that really fine filters take a lot of mouthfeel away, and a lot of some of those richer flavors. So we decided that we wouldn't go super fine with this product. It is, after all, you're using all natural ingredients. That's pretty common. You look at a lot of natural liqueurs, things like that are actually macerated. You do get a little bit of that. The pecans themselves are really interesting from that standpoint, because they have a lot of lipids and proteins, which is not stuff that you find in distilled products quite that much. So you find that particularly some of those proteins do come through, and you see a lot more before filtration.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you.
Yep.
Cool. Thank you. This is great. I did have a question for you just about the rye. Mm-hmm. Can you tell us a little bit more about like where the rye is sourced and like what kind of rye it is? And I'm asking because this rye to me is extremely smooth, and so again, sometimes I get like depending on the rye varietal, I'll get like more spicy notes or more cereal notes. So that's why I was asking the question.
Yeah, so we work for that one. We work with Hogsden Mill, which is able to give us, I think it was a flaked rye, and also we used hammer mill corn. I would say that, ryes are also, it's a really fascinating spirit category because you can get like really, really rye forward, like MGP 95% style, or you can get something that is like almost a borderline bourbon. And for this, we wanted to get something that was very, very kind of balanced. That's why, 63% rye, it doesn't scream rye. And in many ways, it reads a little bit richer than some of the really high ryes that you get.
And you said you were getting the enzymes from the barley?
Yes. Yeah. So there's no exogenous enzymes. Basically, we basically get all those enzymes from mashing the malted barley with rye and corn, and those enzymes will come and obviously convert.
Awesome. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Paul?
So I'm still contractually obligated and limited to 2 questions, right?
I don't make the rules.
Yeah.
No, we do. We do.
Yeah,
He has a
there, too.
history.
Okay.
We have a history with him.
Thank you. All right, so first question.
And that was already one of your questions.
No. Vetoed. Okay, real first question. Thinking back to the Pecan, I thought I heard you saying that you infused pecans in a second fermentation.
Not a fermentation, sorry, a maceration. So basically,
Gotcha.
using mesh bags and holding that in suspension with the whiskey.
That makes a lot more sense now. Thank you.
Yeah, I don't know. I've heard that it is possible to ferment nuts, but it's very, very difficult, and I don't know anybody doing that on a distilling scale. But who knows? Maybe when I get a little more time in my hands, I'll try to whip up a batch.
Yeah.
So on the rum side then, what exactly is a dark rum? This rum seems pretty light and seems like it has a pretty light touch.
Yeah. So when we say dark rum, we mean something that is barrel aged and dark in color. As you might know, rum is a notoriously underregulated and underdefined category. And so there are a lot of dark rums that are essentially light rums with caramel coloring, some flavoring, and a whole bunch of sugar. So there's a huge spectrum. When I think about our dark rum or a lot of dark rums that I really like out there in the world, it is something that takes a clear new make and is then barrel aged and gets its color exactly. And I'm huge fanboy of Foursquare. That's a good one right there. And that's another example of like a really, really nice rich rum that, yep, my old stomping grounds, Queenshare. Who knows? Maybe I distilled that one. Exactly. And those are great products that don't have artificial, they're not sweetened. They just have, they get all of that richness as well as that color from the barrel, at least with privateer. This one is actually sort of on the lighter side because, like I said, I think there's a misconception that rum, and particularly dark rum, has to be sweet. People think it's made from, A, there's so many commercial examples that are really sweet, and B, it's made from sugar, so naturally it's going to be sweet. But, as we know, sugar does not distill over. It does create a pretty dry distillate. And I really like rums that have a pronounced kind of spicy and floral component. That's one of the reasons that I chose these lower charred barrels, as well as the toasting profiles, to drive a little bit of spice, to drive some of that, some of those floral notes as well. I try to get, I don't know how technical to get, but I try to get, I try to use rum yeast that is also fairly estery, not crazy like over the top, like heavy Jamaican rum estery, but again, to coax some of those lighter fruit flavors, some of those spice flavors. And to that end, we also use a particularly a fairly low barrel entry proof of 110, because it does tend to draw out those flavors a little bit better than a higher entry proof.
So I guess because my first question was bad, I'm gonna be a little bad here too. So you're talking about a lot of the floral notes. Are you inspired at all by like the grassy floral Martinique type style? And like what kind, do you use molasses or what do you use for the rum distillation?
Yeah, Man, I would love to make agricole or Clarin type rums, maybe one day. No, I was thinking definitely a little more subtle. And obviously we don't really get fresh pressed sugarcane here in Illinois, not much these days. For this rum, we use a dark brown sugar, which I like because it's, again, you've probably heard me use the word balanced a lot, but molasses I love, can get very rummy kind of quickly, and I find that lighter sugars just don't have a nice heft. The dark brown sugar has a little bit of those lighter, kind of more floral, more delicate notes, but because there is a substantial molasses component, you get that body, you get some of those caramel, some shortbread flavors. So that's what the base of this is. I also make a silver rum, basically an unaged component that uses a little bit of a lighter brown sugar, just because it is supposed to be a lighter product.
Cool. Yeah, we've cut Paul off.
Okay.
William?
Question though.
William.
Hey, so had a couple of questions. Like, what can you tell us about your still, and what proof the spirit comes off the still at, and what do you barrel entry the single malt at?
Absolutely. Now we're getting into what I love talking about, is our single malt. So we do double pot distillation for all of our single malt, as well as traditional off grain distillation. Our stills, they come from two different manufacturers, both American manufacturers, and they're both hybrid stills, but I run them as a pot still for single malt, just because I love double pot distilled single malt. I think that's really where it's at. It's interesting. Both of our stills are sort of a bit squat, but our finishing still has a boiling ball, which is easier to. It's a little harder to describe, but basically a ball in the neck that adds a little. Yeah, it adds a little bit of reflux. We do have downward-facing line arms, which will traditionally make a bit of a heavier spirit, and that's why it's kind of very important if you want to get a lighter spirit while doing pot distillation, is really control that steam. And all of our stills are controlled by me. Yours truly, hand controlled, doing the agitator and the steam. Our new make comes off the still at around 150 proof. After results of that spirit run, but we go into the barrel at 110, because at around that proof or sort of in that range, you get. There's a lot of compounds in a barrel that are more water soluble or more alcohol soluble, and I think that's a really nice middle ground, because you don't get really aggressive tannins or like a grittiness or a bite, but you're also not getting hit over the head with oak and getting those lactones. Our aging environment is also really kind of interesting for me as somebody who lived and studied in Scotland, because the barrel warehouse that you see behind us is partially below grade. And this means that it has a very stable or relatively stable temperature throughout the year, and it's a little more humid. So it sort of resembles the aging conditions of a traditional dunnage warehouse. We'll find that most of our barrels will actually go down slightly in proof, whereas if we're aging something in those really tall rick houses in Kentucky or something, that proof would go up over the years.
Is it the Von Dom still?
No, we don't have Von Dom.
And my other question is, what are your favorite single malts?
Ooh, okay. I'm gonna say, I'm gonna stick to just scotches, so I don't go into Indian and Tasmanian and all that awesome stuff. I would say my favorite distilleries out of Scotland would be Springbank, Glendronach, and probably Clynelish. I think they run a nice gambit of, heavily sherried, from Glendronach, Springbank doing a lot of really great stuff, heavily peated long row, and I really like just the standard whiskey component or the characteristic of Springbank. And then Klein Leash is really cool because you get that really nice little bit of waxiness, some of that, like lemon zest, kind of like a citronella candle.
I got to tell you, Ari, I've got to interrupt you here for a second.
Yep.
William, I love that you asked that question, and the fact that you that your the first of your two answers were Springbank and Glendronach. I just wanted to high five you through the computer,
Oh,
but
yeah.
you know that was awesome. And actually, it's funny. Ariel Tesher knows me so well that in the comments he wrote, "Gil, are you feeding him those answers?" So you know that's So that was very well done, Ariel, and Ari, good answer, and William, great
All right,
question.
then.
Yeah, I think that our next questions are Eric. Am I right? That is Daniel Pikus.
Yep.
All right, Daniel, please unmute.
Okay, so I got to ask, and I apologize if it's a little bit personal on the business side of things. I'm a Peterson Park boy. How'd you end up partnering with Jake Weiss?
I was in Massachusetts. I just worked with privateer, and I was looking for a new role, something that I would definitely be able to put my spin on, be able to create products, create recipes from the ground up. And I got in touch with Andy and Jake. Jake had owned this building before it had even got turned into a distillery, before Andy had approached him and they set out on this great venture. Me personally, I started talking to them. I saw that they were very interested in some of the direction that I kind of wanted to go in, and very kind of receptive to particularly the idea of doing single malts because there's so much heritage here, and we saw that really expanding as a market category in the coming years. I mean, personally, I came out here. I know Jake, we know Jake pretty well, and one of his passions is really refurbishing old buildings, bringing back like new life to them and giving them a new purpose, particularly things that had been allowed to, over many years kind of get a bit run down. And that's what he did to this building. So when I came out here and I met with Andy and Jake, I just really fell in love with the building and saw all the potential it had to be a distillery.
Thank you. I had one other quick question for all the barbecue people here. What do you guys do with the pecan wood when you're done with it? That's
a good question. We sometimes give those barrels to breweries because we have aged the wood inside the barrel, so it makes a really interesting barrel that most breweries have not come across. For the pecans, we repurpose them. We've done a handful of different projects with them. I think we have a local toffee maker that will take them and take these whiskey-soaked pecans and turn them into some really nice toffee. And I know I've been trying to talk to some bakeries about making some products with them as well.
Yeah, let me just read between the lines on Daniel's question, because Daniel and I have competed against each other at whiskey at kosher barbecue competitions with several of the other people on here, with Ariel and Eric and a few other people. So the real question is this: when there are extra pecan wood, when there's extra pecan wood, okay, we would love to talk to you about that, because
awesome.
whiskey-soaked pecan wood for our barbecue. I'm starting to drool right now.
Yeah,
and by the way,
I can get you wood.
Okay, good.
Yeah,
awesome.
let's be in touch on that.
Okay,
sounds good.
We will talk. Now, I understand we have a question still from Debbie Samuels. Debbie, please unmute.
Yes, so I have my single cask kosher for Pecan rum, and I'm going to make a roasted out of it. But I want you to tell me what ingredients I should put with the rum to make an absolutely wonderful roasted for Pecan this year.
Oh my God! If I answer this wrong, my bubby is going to kill me. And I hadn't thought about that, but in my household, we always use walnuts, finely chopped apples, and like a red kosher wine. Having said that, I would maybe swap out that wine with some rum, or do half and half if you want to make it a little more vinous. And don't forget the cinnamon, of course.
All right.
Any other questions, Debbie?
Well, no, I think I'm going to try an Ashkenazic, but I also think I need to think about what a Sephardic Haroset would look like with the rum. So I have to do a little more research, but I definitely think there's a couple of rum-based Harosets to try this year.
Yeah, this is, again, for the non-Jews, this is just a whole bunch of Passover jargon. Sorry about that for the Passover jargon.
You just need to line up rum shots with Haroset chasers.
Oh, God, that's a diabetic's wet dream. All right, I see that. Am I right that Ariel has another question?
Yep.
All right, Ariel.
So, I checked out the website right now, and it's, obviously it's Thornton Distilling, but we've talked about the name Dead Drop a little bit. So, because it's a historic building, is that why the name Thornton's is being kept, and the name of the distillation is Dead Drop, or how is that working?
So Thornton Distilling Company is the house, and then we make Dead Drop. That's our brand that goes to market. Thornton's, I don't know if many people are familiar with Thornton. When you go over I-80, it's kind of right where I-80 and 94 intersect, but there's a huge limestone quarry here. And there's a little tiny town, and it's kind of a post-industrial town. Lovely little place. And when we came down here, as Ari alluded to, like Jake essentially came in and took a building that had been vacant and sort of in a state of blight or disrepair, and resuscitated life back into it. And we wanted to try to really work with the community down here. And we thought by like bringing the community's name into our name, it would like shine kind of a spotlight on the area. And we thought that was really important to us. And then we get that question a lot though, because people do, when they first meet us, it's Dead Drop, and that's just the brand that goes to market.
Last question, just because Paul already used his up. Is that a War Pig shirt?
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Oh, nice. I got to tell you, I think that there's an 11-minute live version of War Pigs from like 1972 or something. I don't know. And it is one of my favorite jams. That video is just incredible, from some small club somewhere. It's amazing. And I'm glad that people pointed this out. I see that Lynn Schatz has her hand up.
Yes. If we wanted to drive to Thornton and we wanted to buy some of the rye and possibly the pecan, would we be able to buy it there?
Yeah, sure thing. We have a bottle shop. Like Ari said earlier, we are trying to bring a really high level craft cocktail program down to the south suburbs. So the bar and bottle shop has been open for about 2 years. We did the grand opening. We did a soft opening, and then finally did a grand opening not too long ago, right before the pandemic. And so we're open Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. We open at 3 p.m. And then
any way of getting there earlier than 3 p.m.?
We open it all before 3.
So we used to have more expansive hours where they're kind of limited right now. We still have the limited staff. We just reopened. So we were open Wednesday through Sunday, and we'd open at noon before. So we're trying to just like ease back into it. And
could you just do a Dead Drop for Lynn?
Yeah, that's a possibility.
I have no idea how I'd fill that out in my monthly TTB reports, but make it happen.
All right, so I see that we have, let's see, Beth, and I think that Beth, you're going to be our last question, because we're heading up pretty much on our time limit here.
Well, that's it, 'cause I don't have a question. I just want to say everything is really good. As most of everyone knows, I'm getting into American whiskey. I'm specifically a Scotch whiskey gal, and everything was really good. The rum is deadly. I haven't had rum since college, and I'm just like, oh no. No, everything was, there's a few things I was a little nervous about, because I've had old fashions. I don't really like pecans. Everything was really, really good.
Thank you.
Thank you.
That's wonderful. And that is actually a great way for us to wrap this up. So before we wrap this all up, Ari and Andrew, I just want to let you know that we have, after we turn off the recording, we typically have an after party. You are under no obligation to stay with us, but that's when, we pretty much have an unmoderated time and have a good time. But before we get to that, I would like everybody, if you are so inclined, to put some more whiskey or one of these drinks in one of your glasses. I'd like to ask everybody to please unmute. If you could all please unmute. And I am going back to the rye whiskey. My bottle is finished of the rye whiskey already because this stuff is so darn good. I'm loving this. Everybody, if you could please join me in thanking Ari and Andrew for not only providing whiskeys to us and rums and old fashions, but also spending their time with us this evening. This was a wonderful evening. Thank you very much and cheers.
Thank you.
Cheers.